I got it from here. Y'all took care of her all this time. Where are the folk that still believe a man ought to do certain things? Thank you, Miss Independent. Congratulations. But I still believe a man ought to be a man. I still believe a man should hold a door. I still believe a man should pay for mostly everything. I still believe a man should be responsible for the roof over your head. Go ahead and get a job. Go ahead and get your degree. Go ahead and make your money. But if you don't get it, tell somebody I got it from here.
We need it. A word to survive. Uplift. A word for the times. We need it. A word to survive. Uplift. A word for the times.
There's a word from the Lord, and I want you to meet us in Matthew chapter 10. Matthew chapter number 10, and I just want to read the first four verses, and it's really just a list, but it'll make sense in a few moments. Matthew chapter 10, beginning with verse number 1, says, "And when he had called unto him his 12 disciples, he gave them power against unclean spirits, to cast them out and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these." Here's the list. The first, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the publican, James the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. That's all we need for this morning with your prayers as the Holy Spirit guides us. This is part 4 of the conversation entitled Just Like Me. And so for just a few moments as the Holy Spirit guides us, I want to talk about the new breed. On your way to your seat, tell them, Pastor, going to talk about the new breed. And I promise you, if you hold me a little while, all of this will make sense. The new breed. Brothers and sisters, we have heard it said on more than one occasion that he who controls the language controls the thought. In other words, who determines the definition of a thing, he who sets the parameters of a particular principle. The truth is, the one who controls the initial interpretation of a thing, he who manipulates the meaning, can also manipulate the mind. This is important for us to know this morning because the same truth applies when it comes to modern media. Those who control the image, those who control what we see and how we see it. Stay with me here. Ultimately, the ones who have the power to paint pictures and present ideas to you and I visually, he who controls the image has the power also to control the idea. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. When I say Africa, there are images that immediately pop up in our heads. Do I have a witness here? Some people, unfortunately, only see jungles and wild animals, while others imagine people half dressed with spears in their hands. Other people see cities and places that would make you think you were downtown Atlanta. But what made movies like Coming to America and Black Panther so powerful, I said this last month, it was the first time that a whole lot of us saw ourselves in a posture of power and absolute authority. Can I take my time in here? He who controls the image controls the idea, and he who controls the language surrounding said image are in the ultimate position of power to create a narrative for a whole nation. This is the case not only in our modern media and movies and magazines and what have you, but such is also the case, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to what I call ecclesiastical imagery. Again, I say ecclesiastical imagery. Pastor, what is that? What is ecclesiastical imagery? It is the way you view the Bible. Specifically, Bible characters and the pictures that were presented to you when you were growing up in church. For example, check out the screen. When you Google Adam and Eve, more than likely, them the people that show up. For those that are listening to me on radio, for those of us that may be visually impaired, it's two white people. Y'all gonna feel me in about 5 minutes. With apples in their hand. And then when you search for Abraham, here's the image of Abraham that usually pops up. When you grew up like I did, watching the 10 Commandments on television and the image of Moses that was given to you, they gave you Charlton Heston as Moses. And then before you know it, there go Moses. There's Charlton Heston played. Everybody grew up watching the 10 Commandments like I did. Okay. And then Cleopatra, Elizabeth Taylor. Looks nothing like the women that are sitting around you in the pews this morning. And then David, sculpted in the image of Michelangelo. Sculpted in the image of who they would like to think that David looked like. I'm talking about ecclesiastical imagery. And then you move on to Mary, the mother of Jesus. All you've ever seen is this Barbie-like face from the Catholic Church. Y'all ain't got to say amen. I know what I'm talking about here. And then good old Jesus. Don't even get me started on Jesus. For centuries, we've been presented with a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Savior, even though the Bible says otherwise. Now, please understand, the purpose for my preaching today is not to get into racial representations or demographic depictions. However, I would be less of a pastor and a teacher with all these beautiful black children sitting behind me. There's no way I can let you come to church all your life and not tell you about all the people in the Bible who were black just like you. Now, if you ain't gonna say amen, I'm gonna go ahead and preach it for myself. Abraham was a black man, just like me. Moses was a Hebrew and grew up in Egypt. He had melanin in his skin, just like you. The Garden of Eden was in Africa, Ethiopia to be exact. I'm talking about the Euphrates and the Tigris River. Y'all wasn't ready for me. We may not know where Eden is, but I'm quite certain that a man made out of clay dirt had to have some color in his skin. Tell your neighbor, ecclesiastical imagery. Don't go nowhere. I got more. Jesus was born in Bethlehem and raised in Nazareth, both of which are in the Middle East. But then for 2 years, while he was under threat from King Herod, you're going to catch me in a minute, the Bible says they hid in Egypt until God gave them the all clear. Now, I hope I don't have to work too hard to get y'all to remember where Egypt is. But wake your neighbor up and tell them Egypt is in Africa, just so you know. It's in Africa. And there's no way a person can hide out in a place full of colored folk unless him and his family had color themselves. It's like me trying to hide out at a Tea Party rally. It just ain't gonna happen because ain't nobody there that looked like me. The reason Jesus could hide in Africa was because his skin was kissed by nature's sun just like them. We can argue, was he a dark-skinned Jew or a light-skinned Jew? Was he Arabian or was he more African? That don't matter. The point is he had color just like me. And so at the very least, see, I had to sneak the truth on y'all because y'all, you can't teach folk just straight up. You have to sneak it on them. At the very least, we need to be more historically accurate when it comes to these pictures that we paint and the images that we accept. However, the truth that I really want to drop in your heart today, as I said, it has nothing to do with race or demographics or even genetics. No, the new word that I want to download into your ecclesiastical vocabulary is juvenescence. Juvenescence. I got $1 for whoever can spell this next Sunday. Juvenescence, write it down, J-U-V-E-N. It's a real word, E-S-C-E-N-C-E. Juvenescence. It simply means being or becoming youthful. Somebody say juvenescence. It's your new word. Now I'm telling you, it's your spelling word. Sunday school teachers test them on next Sunday to see if they know what it means. I'm talking about the grown folk too. Test them. What does juvenescence mean? It means to be young or to become youthful. It's where you get the word juvenile, referring to a younger person of a certain age. Now, you may be asking the question, what does all that have to do with what I've been talking about for the last 7 to 8 minutes? And furthermore, how does all of that tie into the words of the text? Give me 7 more minutes, I'll put it all together. I started this message by saying he who controls the language controls the thought. And by extension, he who controls the image controls the idea. Well, when it comes to various people in the Bible, not only have we been misinformed ethnically, but I submit in the next few minutes, you're going to learn that we've been mistaught generationally. Put it plain, Pastor, because they ain't ready for you today. I submit that a whole lot of folk in the Bible you thought was old were young. And some folk that you thought were younger were actually older. If you were in Sunday school a few weeks ago, you already know I'm talking about Isaac. Because Isaac was not a toddler or even a teenager like many of us thought he was. When Abraham laid him out on the altar, we assumed that he was a little baby or that he was a toddler or even a teenager. No, Isaac was a grown man, probably in his mid-20s when Abraham laid him out on the altar. You thought he was younger. He was actually older. I don't have time to reteach that. You should have went to Sunday school last month. But here's some new information I just learned. What if I told you that the group of individuals that we know as disciples, what if I told you that a lot of them, all of them, were younger than we originally thought? What if I told you, listen, what if I could provide evidence of the fact that Jesus' original membership was made up of millennials? Okay. Follow me. The text says the names of the 12 apostles are as follows: Simon, who is called Peter; Andrew, his brother; James, the son of Zebedee; John, his brother; Philip; Bartholomew; Thomas; Matthew; James, the son of Alphaeus; Thaddeus; Simon the Canaanite; and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. If you grew up like me, and you operated under the assumption that the disciples were much older men. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, Jesus was only 30 when he got started. So at the very least, we would have to consider Jesus in that context, Generation X. How many of y'all are in your late 20s, early 30s? Raise your hand. I want to see you. You're Generation X. Jesus was 30 when he got started. But ladies and gentlemen, I have found evidence, and y'all going to be real tight until we get into this thing. I have found evidence based on historical analysis. There's a good chance that Jesus' disciples were between 13 and 30 years old. I said 13 and 30 years old, respectively. Are y'all ready? Here it is. There's a book I want you to get. I want you to read it. It's called 12 Ordinary Men by John MacArthur. 12 Ordinary Men by John MacArthur. And in that book, you can find in greater detail some of the information that I'm about to give to you right now. Can I trust you to do some research on your own? Can't be leaving here talking about he know what he was talking about, and you ain't even researched what I'm talking about. Do some reading for yourself, then come back and talk to me. Understand that the Bible does not specifically give the ages of any of the 12 original disciples. However, a few observations can be made regarding their ages. First of all, we know Jesus was about 30 years old when his public ministry began. We know that from Luke 3 and 23. We know that from Luke 3 and 23. And in Jewish culture, here's the proof now, disciples were generally younger than their teacher. In Jewish culture, students were usually younger than their teacher. That's why it makes sense when Jesus referred to them as little children. It was probably because they were several years younger than he was. This is the first proof. Students were usually younger in Jewish culture than their students, than their teacher. Secondly, Jewish culture made it customary for a child to begin his or her religious training at the age of 5, and then you continue to age 12 or 13. If you were a Jewish child, you started learning at an early age because that's what the law commanded. So from about the age of 5 all the way to the age of 12, if you were a Jewish child, that's when your training began. If a boy was intelligent and he was interested in continuing his religious study, he would then seek a rabbi to disciple him and would follow that pattern until maybe the age of 30. All right. Thirdly, many disciples, you know this, worked as fishermen. James and John specifically left their father in the boat to follow Jesus. That's in Matthew chapter number 4, verse 21 and 22. This means they were old enough to work full time. Why? Because from the age of 5 to the age of 12, they had already got their religious training. Now they go out there and they find a job. So they were at least teenagers by the time they met Jesus because they were able to leave home and follow the rabbi. Number 4, this is the proof, and then I'm going to go ahead to the preaching. Peter was already married when he met Jesus. We know that because in Matthew 8 and 14, his mother-in-law was sick. You don't have a mother-in-law unless you got a wife. Somebody talk back to me here. This means Peter was at least old enough to be married. At the very least, Peter was in his mid-teens. Just to give you some random information. The later lives of a whole lot of the disciples help reveal some of their ages. We know that John lived the longest out of all the disciples. He passed away in the last decade of the first century. This was 60 years after he walked with Jesus. So even if John was in his 90s when he died, that'll put him at least in his 20s or 30s when he met Jesus. And then Peter referred to himself as an old man when he was in his 60s. Somebody that's 60 or above, tell somebody that ain't old. I hear y'all talking. He said that 30 years after walking with Jesus. That means Peter was in his 20s or his 30s at the time when they met. And then the Gospel of Matthew was written 30 to 40 years after Jesus got up from the grave, which means that Matthew was probably in his 20s when he was following Jesus. I said it before. A young man's discipleship training would usually begin at the age of 12 or 13. If this is to be true, then some of those disciples might have got with Jesus as young as 13 years old. They were millennials. Why is all of this is important. The Bible doesn't give the exact ages, and it's likely that all of them were between 13 and 30. John was probably the youngest, and Peter was probably the oldest since he was already married. What all that got to do with us sitting in here today? The point I'm trying to make, this is actually point number one. God can use anybody at any age, and the sooner the better. Preach, Pastor Simmons. God can use anybody at any age, and the sooner the better. What that means is God found a new breed, and he chose them to be his disciples. When Jesus said, "Let the children come to me," it wasn't just to sit around and take selfies with him. It was so that they could learn and they could be nurtured and they can grow. Don't ever prevent a child from coming to the Lord, because he can use them even at their young age. See, we live in a culture where we wait until children are already grown before we try to raise them. See how quiet it's getting now? But if you grew up in those days, you would raise them from birth to know the Lord and love the Lord. They ain't finna go 15 and 16 years and don't know no Bible verses. They ain't finna go half their life and then say, "I guess I'll go to church." No. Is there anybody who was raised like I was raised? Ain't nobody asked you if you felt like going to church. Ain't nobody asked you if you felt like getting in the choir. Ain't nobody asked you if you felt like going to Sunday school. They woke us up in the morning and said, "We're going to church," not because you want to or not, because I said so. Fact about it, I know it's 100 of y'all grew up like I grew up. You start getting ready for Sunday on Friday. That's when you got out of school and mama took you to the store and you got your stockings for Sunday morning. Somebody ought to talk to me here. Saturday, you got your hair pressed in the kitchen and that hot comb got there behind your neck, behind your ear, and about burnt you to death. Somebody know what I'm talking about. That's when you got your hair cut for Sunday morning. That's when you ironed your white shirt for Sunday morning. That's when they raised you. It wasn't something you stumbled into. You got ready to go to worship. And so at this age and stage, don't discount who God can use. Because I'm here to tell you, I can see sincerity in a child, because at their age and stage, I'm going to get in trouble when I say this, they ain't learned how to be fake yet. They ain't learned how to perpetrate yet. They ain't learned how to put fake smiles on their faces yet. So when you hear a child sing, it's real. When you hear a child pray, it's for real. They may not know all the words you know. They may stumble and mess up and cry through it. But I thank God for the sincerity, because God is using them at their stage. God can make a rock cry out if he wanna. So who are we to say God can't use a young person? You don't discount people because they don't have the experience that you have. If somebody let you learn, if somebody gave you a chance, thank you, Holy Ghost, then you got to be willing. The church has got to be available for God to use these children. Church is the only place I know of where everybody gets a round of applause. It don't matter how bad you sound. It don't matter how bad you mess up. Church has always been a place where everybody gets applauded and everybody gets loved on, even into adulthood. Aren't you glad you have a place that will meet you where you are and love you the way you're supposed to be? Because you make mistakes sometime, you stumble sometime, you don't always cross your T's and dot your I. Don't tell me who God cannot use, because he used me and he's trying to use you. So point number one says, God can use anyone at any age, and the sooner the better. If we can get them down this aisle at 4 years old, 5 years old, we're not forcing them. But if the Lord moves them at that stage, let them come. If God puts it on their heart to want to do things, because let me tell you, the devil's recruiting. The devil got something for them to do. We see what's happening out there in the world today. So the sooner they get in here, the better. Because if you train up a child in the way that they should go, even when they at that school, even when they on that campus, even when they're presented with other options, they can say, no, I was raised better than that. My mama would kill me if I did that. My daddy will shoot my brains out if I said that. No, I was raised in a different kind of place. I'm in the world, but I'm not of the world. I wasn't scared of no police growing up. Shoot, I was scared of my mom and daddy. Somebody ought to talk to me here. I respected the teachers because I knew that if they got on their phone and my mama got to come off of work to come see about somebody gonna talk to me after a while. If my daddy had to stop what he was doing to come down there to that school, I'm gonna need the police to protect me from them. But now, some of you Generation X parents and some of y'all millennial parents, y'all show up to the school to fight the teacher. Don't you put your hands on my child. If you would have put your hands on them, maybe the law wouldn't have to. Maybe if you get them straight, then the teacher wouldn't catch all this hell in the 4th grade classroom. How I got to leave 25 other kids to deal with your bad behind child. You deal with them at home so they'll be straight when they leave the house. The system is failing our children. Ain't no system ever raised us. Somebody talk back to me here. We were raised at home. We were raised in the church. We were raised in the community. Miss Johnny Mae down the street. Mr. Bubba over there at the corner store. They helped to raise us before we got to school. Don't tell me who God can't use. I'm trying to move on here. But the sooner, the better. Let's go ahead and be honest. Even church kids get caught tripping. Even folk who were born and raised on the front pew still lose our minds sometimes. Somebody ought to talk to me here. The things I used to do, I'm trying not to do no more, but at least you got it in you. Because you'll never stray too far when you got the Lord in your heart. Point number 2, this is what you need to understand. Most major movements started with millennials. I'm not discounting older people. I'm telling you, you look at this world's history. A lot of the major movements that have happened in this world have started with millennials. All of you who are 30 and under, raise your hand. 30 and under, raise your hand. I used to be in that crowd before. I ain't in that crowd no more. 30 and under, 30 and under. It's all right. It is what it is. Keep living. Most major movements started with y'all. What am I talking about? The abolitionists who stood up and said, we're not going to take this anymore. The ones who rounded up the other slaves and said, we running away tonight, that was young folk. Yeah, okay, it gets quiet. The civil rights movement started with college students who said, we're going to sit at this lunch counter. Even if we get beat up, even if they sick the dogs and the water hose and the billy clubs on her, it was them college students that called home and said, Mama, you might hear some bad news about me. You may hear that I've gotten hurt or that I got locked up, but we believe in this. It was the older folk that said, boy, you're going to get yourself killed. You forget Dr. King was in his 20s. He went to Morehouse at 15, graduated at 19, and by then he was already in the movement. He was a millennial. He was 39 when he died. Malcolm X was not even 40 when he died. These was young folk. Y'all ain't talking to me. They were the ones that stood up. They the ones that called home and said, I don't know, I know y'all want to be passive, but we ain't going to take this no more. It was young folk after 1968 that started growing their afros and throwing up their fists and saying, I'm black and I'm proud. It was young folk. It was young folk that used music to shape the culture. They had messages in their music, just like the slaves used code words to talk about their escape. They wrote it into their lyrics, the words to our freedom. Young folk were innovative, came up with brilliant inventions. Don't discount that. What young folk, the young generation has done. See, you got a generation of folk who didn't follow the traditional pattern of the old breed. See, when I'm coming up, they said, you go to school, get your lesson, get you a piece of paper, and get you a job. These folks sit at home in their pajamas all day, playing behind a computer, making an app, and become billionaires. See, y'all ain't talking to me here. I'm not saying that college is not important. I'm not saying education is not important, but you got to leave room for the possibility that every one of them may not go that route. Some of them may create something that set all of us free. Some of them may take on a trade. Some of them may end up owning their own business. They may not spend $100,000 trying to get out of A&M or Florida State. Some of them may do it with their hands, and you got to leave room for that. The Black Lives Matter movement was young folk because they looked at their peers being gunned down on television. They watched live on Facebook as their peers, as their generation catch a bullet. That's when the young folks stood up and said, yeah, all lives do matter, but for some reason black lives don't seem to matter as much. It was young folk right here in Tallahassee. They marched to the Capitol. And didn't they sleep in somebody's office or something a couple of years ago? Just lay it down in there and say, we ain't going nowhere. You do what you got to do. But until you hear us, young folk did that. These are young athletes that are speaking up for the communities that they come from. See, now we celebrate. All right. We celebrate Michael Jeffrey Jordan. We love him and we pay hundreds of dollars for his shoes. He's the greatest to ever do it, whatever. But when stuff got hot 20-some years ago and they asked Mike to speak up, Mike said, well, now, Republicans buy shoes too. As if to say, I'm not going to offend them because that messed with my bottom line. See how quiet y'all getting in here? Jim Brown was a young man back in the 60s and 70s. He's the one that said, y'all don't treat us fairly. We're going to get together and we're going to turn this place out. Somebody ought to talk to me here. He was a young man, left millions on the table and said, I don't care nothing about no endorsements. I don't care if you like me. This matters. Somebody tried to tell OJ that. OJ said, I ain't black, I'm OJ. Okay. But he found out somewhere around 1994, somebody ought to talk to me here. He found out later on that he was a man of color. He found out in recent years that folk that used to love you only love you when you're running for them, only love you when you blend in with them. But as soon as you harm one of them, all of a sudden you's a nigger again. Y'all ain't come to talk to me today. The Parkland protests, the March for Our Lives that happened over the weekend, it was young people. I'm almost through here that started that. Why do you need to hear this message? Because the men who changed the world with Jesus were young just like you. They were youthful and juvenescent. Test coming next week now. Just like you. They were not 60 and 70. They were not gray-bearded and bald-headed. It's not a knock against the older folks in the room. I'm going to get to us in a minute. But you got to know how empowering it is for these millennials to read the Bible and to actually see themselves. Like, wow, the disciples were teenagers? Pastor ain't making this up. There is historical evidence to suggest that these men were not middle-aged. Because a middle-aged man would not have sat up under a 30-year-old man. And the only difference between them and us is that they were bred to take action much earlier. You're going to like this. By the time you were 12, you were a man in Jewish culture. By the time a boy was my son's age, 13, finna be 14, if he make it to 14 in May, if I let him live that long, you were already considered a man by that age. Now, here's the question you need to be asking me. What made you a man? At that age, it means you can get a job. I thought the whole church would have shouted on that. I said, get a job. It means you could provide for a family, and for the girls, it means that you too were ready to take on responsibility. Need I remind you that Mary was about 16 when she had Jesus and married Joseph? Hear me now. You didn't stay home eating up Captain Crunch till you were 25. Waking up at 11 o'clock in the morning, stretching to my mom what you cooked. Somebody ought to talk back to me here. By the time you were that age, you were already prepared to be responsible. A man could start his own family by 16, and the girls, watch me now, this real old school, the girls would not leave home until they married out. See, I just lost a whole generation. They have no idea what I'm talking about. You stay home with your mom and daddy until a man came and married you out. Y'all didn't get an apartment together on Tharp Street. Y'all didn't try it out for a little while and just see how we get along, and then, we can work it out, and if it don't work, we can go our separate ways, and I do that 8 times until I find a husband. If you did it like God said it, some of y'all would still be home right now because you would wait. Now, why did I have to wait, Pastor? Why I can't just go get my own place? Here's why. Because it was the man's job to knock on the door. He didn't honk no horn. He knocked on the door, presented himself to daddy, presented himself to mama, and said, hey, y'all raised her all of her life. I got it from here. Y'all took care of her all this time. Where are the folk that still believe a man ought to do certain things? Thank you, Miss Independent. Congratulations, but I still believe a man ought to be a man. I still believe a man should hold a door. I still believe a man should pay for mostly everything. I still believe a man should be responsible for the roof over your head. Go ahead and get a job. Go ahead and get your degree. Go ahead and make your money. But if you don't get it, tell somebody, I got it from here. That's why he married you out. Because he paid your daddy to show your daddy that you had it covered. Now, it may be where, mom and daddy may have to co-sign for some stuff. The older folk don't like that because they want you out of their pocket as soon as possible. But now, if you ain't got no credit, you need some help. They put you on that right track. But the point I'm trying to make to you is the culture got you ready earlier. We're letting our kids lay up too long. They need to know how to cook something and clean something and build something and do something. These little jokers don't want to take the trash out. These folk don't want to walk to the mail buyer. These little girls can't even boil water. What are we teaching them? Wait till a man's heart is through his stomach. Well, some of y'all ain't gonna never get no man if that's the case. Because he don't want to eat out every night. He don't want pizza and wings every night. Every now and then, somebody need to know how to whip up some oxtails, don't you know? Preach, boy. Somebody need to know how to smother a pork chop. I wish I had some help in here. Somebody need to know how to fry some chicken. Somebody need to know how to stir some Kool-Aid, some sweet tea. Somebody better help me here. We gonna eat Panera bread tonight. The devil is a lie. That can't be every day. We got to start training. Mothers, you in here raising these boys, teach them how to cook too. Teach him how to survive. And when he gets a family, every now and then, the man ought to cook something. The man ought to treat the whole family. Y'all sit down. It's been a long day. Let me cook up with this steak right here. Let me show you what my mama taught me. I wish I had some help up in here. Y'all ain't the only ones know how to smother something. Y'all ain't the only one know how to make it out here. There's some brothers who were raised the right way too. And so I'm through now. Do y'all understand the greater point that I'm making to you? This was a new breed that Jesus went and reached for. The last point rather that I want to make in case somebody feels left out. The new breed is not an age, it's an attitude. When I say new breed, I'm not saying all you old folks sit down and all you old folks just your time is past. That's not what I'm saying. Don't take it that way. You know me better than that. I respect church tradition more than some old folk do. I'm telling you that this label of new breed is not about an age. It's about an attitude. When Jesus got started in ministry, he ran into a generation of people who could not see the forest for the trees. It's funny that we go to church, we come to church to worship Jesus, but in Jesus' time, guess who hated him the most? Church folk. Who was the first to call him a devil? Church folk. Who was the first to push him out? Church folk. But today we come to church to worship him. But the original religious folk didn't like him at all. They couldn't see the blessing that was right there in front of them because they were too steeped in their own traditions. The Pharisees and the Sadducees were so busy trying to out-religify each other. Who was guilty of this, and who can we uncover today, and who can we judge, and who grew up this way, and who is that way, and who need to get their life together, and none of them were right. Here they had the Savior right in front of them. But because of their inability, or maybe it was their unwillingness to shift, it caused them to miss their blessing. When I talk about the new breed around here, I'm not talking about an age. I'm talking about an attitude. Have you shifted to where you can see what God is doing in this age? You can't do church the same way you did it 50 years ago. Because in the meantime, the enemy has got the same playbook, but now he's using different players. And if you don't take the time to talk to some of these young folk that you say you ain't that you don't like and they ain't got no sense. If we're going to have a church in 30 years, somebody better talk to them. I am less concerned with how they look and how they live as I am than what's in their heart. Because the fact is, man, I wasn't even going here today. I was doing real good with what I was doing there. The reality is, a whole lot of folk can dress stuff up. The reality is you can throw a suit on Satan and a dress on the devil. But if your heart is not right, God still can't do nothing with you. I am less concerned with how these people look and then what they talk like and what's going on the outside. I'm more concerned on the inside because that's what God looks at. You can't do church the same way that you did it before. Is the church going to live past you? Or do you even care? Because from what I hear, this is our church and my church, and I was here before all of these folks. So? Do you not get excited when a new baby is born? Do you not get excited when another member is added to the family? You can't have the only child syndrome in church. My pew and my seat and my position and my ministry and my. God gets sick of that, and so do we. God is raising up a generation of people where we got to be honest as a black church. There's a generation of us who needed titles to affirm our sense of somebodyness. There's a group of us who grew up in church. You've seen it. You know what I'm talking about. There's a generation that needed all of that because it affirmed who they were. In other words, they called you boy and gal and coon out there in the world. But at church, you were brother chairman. You were Madam President. Over choir number 1 and usher board number 2. Somebody ought to talk to me here. You were the head of the missionary society or whatever. Listen, I was born in church. I respect church history, but there's a new breed of Christian that God is raising up. We don't care much about positions. All we want to talk about is purpose. Is that you today? Do you care about the title or the task? Because I got some folk that tell me, Pastor, really, please, if you can help it, don't give me no title, don't give me no position, because I'm still worldly. Somebody ought to be honest up in here. Don't make me no missionary, because I still go to the shrine. Or somebody ought to talk to me here. Don't make me no deacon yet, because I still be at the cigar bar. And I don't want them folk to run into me and say, you are over there at Jacob Chapel, you got that position. Pastor, don't give me a position. Just let me do the work. I respect church history, but there's a group of us that's raised up now. We don't care nothing about no title. What we respect is actions. Don't be popping your suspender talking about, I'm a deacon, so? I'm a minister, so? What people want to know, they don't even need you to be perfect. They just need you to be real. That's where some of you mess up. You think that God is looking for perfect people. No, he's looking for folk who are real enough, who are genuine enough, who are authentic enough to be able to say, I may not be a whole lot of things, but my heart is for Jesus. I'm talking to the new breed. I'm talking to the breed that don't have to have a name called every week. I'm talking to the breed that ain't got to see their face on no screen. I'm talking to the breed that don't need no round of applause, that don't need no congratulations, that don't need to have a title attached to their name. Anybody know what I'm talking about here? I'm talking about give me an assignment and watch me make it do what it do. Let somebody else be over the program. Just let me do my little part. I'm looking for the new breed that don't mind taking out trash. I'm looking for the new breed that don't mind picking up a piece of paper if you see it. I'm looking for a new breed that can help somebody else's child because somebody helped you when you were coming up. I'm looking for a new breed where it ain't about what you wear, but it's about who you are on the inside. And if I let God love on me long enough, my outside will change, but it starts in my heart. Can I tell you one more thing? Just one more thing. We out of here. We out of here. Cause I gotta turn the stove on, and I gotta start these grits this week, so they'll be done by next Sunday. You know, good grits take time. These little These little 4-minute grits y'all be eating, that ain't what I'm talking about. These grits take time. So I need to start the fire. I need to put it down low. I need to put some butter, and I need to put some milk, and then I just need to stir for a little while. And by next Sunday, they're going to be good and ready. Thank you, baby. Listen. This new breed is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. That's why I read the list to you. Verse 2, verse 3, verse 4. You look at that list of folk, and you tell me which one of them in there wasn't shady. Which one of them disciples in there wasn't crooked? Which one of them in there didn't have at least the potential to let you down? Is there anybody other than me who know you ain't got no business on the team? But tweet this. Tweet this. In spite of your defects, you're still a disciple. My God, if he let Peter on the list, then I know you can stay on the list. I'm here because he recruited me. I know you're not qualified, but God says, that's why I want you. I know you got flaws, but that's why I want you. I'm trying to get you ready for Easter Sunday because y'all ain't going to be ready for me next Sunday about this time. I'm telling you, there's some folk that we have thrown away, and God is saying, them the folk I want. Don't come to church next Sunday if you don't want to hear about redemption. If you can't let Peter live, don't come to church next Sunday. Say, let the pew be open for somebody who really wants to hear the real gospel. Because God says, in spite of your past, I want you on the team. If you had a past, you'd be shouting right now. Because I'm through preaching. If you made some mistakes, I want you on the team. If you still cuss and cut people sometime, Peter, I want you on the team. You ain't got to worry about this new breed walking around like we better than everybody else. Because some of us know that if it had not been, come on, fellas, I'm ready now. I say if it had not been for the Lord who was on it. Where's the new breed of Christian? I ain't got time to walk around with my nose up in no air. I ain't got time to sit up in church acting as if I'm in the theater watching some entertainment show. No, when I think about the goodness of Jesus and all he's done for me, where's the new breed of people? I need about 300 folk who will look around and tell somebody it was nobody. Come on, help me shut down here. I said it was nobody but the Lord. I need the new breed that can say he looked beyond all of my faults and met all of my needs. Where is the new breed that know you got some dirt on you, but the Lord made a way for you? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. Somebody shout grace that called me, God's grace that chose me, God's grace that saved me, God's grace that changed me. It was grace that came all the way down through 42 generations, wrapped on flesh just like me. born of a woman, just like me, grew up just like me, had to go to Sunday school just like me. He met the devil just like me. He was tempted just like me. He ran out of money just like me. Had to fight some devils just like me. And right early one Friday morning, they led him up Calvary's hills, stretched him wide, and they hung him high. He died. Didn't he die? He died till heaven got satisfied. I said I was going to wait until next Sunday. I was going to let y'all kill him Friday, and I'll get him up next Sunday. But this may be my last time. I may not see you next week. So can I tell it like I tell it? Can I say it like I say it? It was early one Friday morning. They nailed his hands, nailed his feet, crowned his head, and pierced his side. He died that Friday morning, and they laid him in a borrowed tomb, stayed in the grave all day Friday, all Friday night, stayed there all day Saturday, and all Saturday night, but Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his hand. He got power to save your soul, power to make you whole, hey, power to deliver you, power to make a way for you, power, 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 oh, power. Anybody here know my Jesus? Anybody here love my Lord? Shake your neighbor one more time. Shake your neighbor like you love Jesus. Shake your neighbor like you're going to heaven, and tell them, neighbor, oh, neighbor, I may not be all I ought to be, but I'm the new breed. He walks with me. He talks with me. He holds my hand. He guides my feet. Do you know him? Have you tried him? Ain't he all right? Won't he do it? Won't he do it? Say it. Say it. Hey, he will. Well, I ain't through yet. I want y'all to find 3 more people and grab them by the hand. Shake your neighbor, don't want to talk to you. Shake one more neighbor so we can get out of here. Turn to your neighbor and give them a handshake and tell them, neighbor, there's a whole lot of things that I don't know. Tell them I don't know every verse in the Bible. Tell them I don't know all the stuff you know, but tell them this one thing I do know. Jesus is the head of my life. Jesus made a way for me. Jesus opened doors for me. Won't he do it? Won't he do it? Say it. Yes! 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 He will! He will! Hey! Hey! Ah, he will! I'm in the new breed. They were rejects everywhere else. But God came and got them. I'm in the new breed.